Have you ever stopped to think about the Bible? I mean, as a book. It's not all that great in size. Uh, it can easily be carried in one hand. It's not even as big as an exhaustive dictionary. And yet, God has revealed to us massive amounts of information about Himself, about His plan of salvation, about the history of the world, people, places, values, standards. On and on goes the list. History, science, math. It covers such a wonderful, vast amount of information. And yet today, as we come to Genesis chapter 23, 20 verses, you say to yourself, why would God, when He only gave us one book, not even a huge book at that, would He take a full chapter of the book of Genesis, 20 verses, to record the purchase of a burial spot for Sarah? Think about it. One full chapter, 20 verses, just to explain the purchase of a cemetery spot for Sarah. Well, what does it explain? As I read it and as I meditated on it, I saw three things that we learn about Abraham. We learned about his grief for Sarah, a wife that he dearly loved. We read and we realize Abraham's God, how Abraham had been blessed and guided and directed by God. And we think about his grit. As an old man, he's still very concerned about the details of life. And he's got his trials just like everybody else. Grief, God, and grit. Or you might say you see his tears, his testimony, and his trials. God gives us a microscopic view of Abraham. Many times we see thousands of years pass by in just a couple of chapters of the Bible. And here we see one, perhaps 2 days, but we see into the heart of Abraham. And when we see into the heart of Abraham, we see into the heart of God. God cares about your grief. God cares about your relationship with Him, your God. And God cares about your grit. That is your ability to take His commands and His direction and follow them through to the last days of your life. He cares about your tears. He cares about your testimony. That is the testimony that you leave as your reputation. And He cares about your trials. Yes, it seems strange to have a chapter about buying a burial spot. And yet it reveals so much. Not only about Abraham and Sarah, but about God Himself. So as I looked at this chapter, I sat back and said, isn't that amazing? That God would take a chapter out of a relatively small book to honor Sarah for her faithful service to God, to honor Abraham and his faithfulness and obedience to God, to show you the humanity of the two. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but real humans with real emotions and real feelings. God cares. about our tears and our testimony and our trials. And you'll find it all right there in Genesis chapter 23. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you, and recognize that God does care about every detail of your life.